Hey guys, Kano here from Move Train Perform. Today we're going to talk about two key errors that people typically make when initiating squat deadlift mechanics with the hip hinge. So the hip hinge is super important. When we consider all of the movements that we complete on a day-to-day basis in our training. If you're doing a deadlift, we're going from here to here. If we're doing a kettlebell swing, we're going from here to here. If we're doing a back squat, we're moving through this position. If we're doing a snatch, we're going to come up through this hip hinge to get our triple extension. If we're doing a clean, we're going to come up through this hip hinge to get extension. If we're jumping, we're going to jump through a hip hinge. Now, if you do this incorrectly, you're just going to be losing power, losing efficiency, putting more stress on your back, more stress on your knees, etc., etc. So, what we want to do is show you through some common faults we see every day people making that really hold them back and need addressing. So, what we see, the first one is the anterior chain dominant movement. So they go to initiate a squat or they go to initiate a movement, and the first thing they do is they dump into their knees, and the knees go straight out over their toes. Now, typically when that happens, people go, oh, I need to work on my ankle flexibility because every time I squat, my ankles feels like they get stuck in the way. So they dump the knees forward here, run out of ankle range eventually, and then sort of bump back into it, and it all sort of folds in on top of itself. So what else happens there is if you dump straight this way, you start searching for range and things start to cave and turn out, okay? So that's the first thing that we see, dumping into the knees straight away. Second big mistake we see is overextension of the lower back. So instead of shifting your weight into the posterior chain, loading the hamstrings and glutes, keeping the spine in exactly the same position as it started in, effectively, from here to here, the spine position doesn't change much. You're just loading into the hip, closing the hip off. If you undo the tension in your lumbar spine, so you go from here, we break at the lower back to stick the bum back and try to get that hip hinge, then you're losing all of the tension that you've created through your back. So what we want to try and do is keep your back in exactly the same position and hinge through that mechanics, rather than overextending to start with, duck bumming it, and getting stuck here. You close off the anterior side of your hip, run into end range, and then have to lose all of that tension on the way back down. Okay? It just loads up your lower back. It's like doing lots and lots of little back extensions every time you do a lift. So what we want is dissociation, or the ability to stabilize your spine and move at the hip. So dissociated movement. Get the hip doing the movement, the spine nice and stable. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through some progressions to build that dissociation, using supported positions, unsupported positions, feedback and no feedback, and then building into some load. So go through the progressions. Wherever you get stuck, wherever you find the most difficulty maintaining good spinal position, spend your time, work in that position before you move to the next one. Don't just blast through just so that you can lift up some weight, yeah? We're going to work position, so we're going to stay at the point that you find you break down, work in that point, and then progress to the next step.